Hello and welcome to Extra Time Podcast, episode 70. However, the fifth of the Footy Chat podcast. Now, Lorenzo, what a week it's been, and it started strong. Thursday night, I'm just going to go to the pick of the week, and then I'm going to ask you about your feelings of the round, okay? So,
yeah,
I think there's no doubt. This has to be it.
yeah,
What better
yeah.
way?
This
Campbell
was the,
doing the backflip. I mean, come on.
yeah, this is going to be. I can already see this in the 2026 AFL season promo from the first game of 2025. That was the first thing I thought of when this celebration occurred on Thursday night. It's good to be talking to you, Woodsy, albeit virtually this time. We've had to clamor a few things together, but hopefully we'll put together a good show for the listening audience. Thursday night, it didn't really go as anyone expected. A few teams this week, very much including Carlton, right under the pump to start the season, which is not an ideal way to open the campaign for many teams. I'm one of the few members of supported groups who we actually had a good weekend. I'm in all sorts of Geelong. I've got a scarf here and a beanie.
I'm not going to take that, mate. I'm not going to take that. I'm not going to take that. I'm cutting you off straight. I'm doing the boxy, cutting you off straight away. Can't let you get too prideful of yourself. However,
Okay.
I want to talk about the Carlton-Richmond game and we'll go into it later, I think. But we're going to just post that for now. But the review, what a big week. It started strong with, Carlton losing what many would have thought the unlosable. They were 41 points up at one stage. But we're going to talk about that in a bit of bad kicking is bad football, because when you break it down, it was kind of, how did they lose it? Your team, I love your notes. Geelong is still a good team.
Yeah, still a good team. It's the one constant throughout the entire start of every football season. You realise Geelong are going to be good again, and they were. And apart from really the back end of the third quarter, to be honest, it always looked relatively one-sided. Bailey Smith looked good in his first proper hit out for Geelong. The signings today of, who was it, Cameron, Shannon Neal, and another tall forward, I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, who recommitted to the club this afternoon, as we're recording this on a Wednesday night. So things are looking good for Geelong. Dangerfield's no longer the AFL PA president, so he's got more time to focus on the Geelong Football Club matters than anything else. So very positive start to the season for Geelong, getting a win down at home against a team, Fremantle, that has had plenty of luck at GMHBA Stadium and plenty of good performances there in recent memory. So we're off to a good start for this campaign, and I'm looking forward to seeing how we go
this week.
Yes,
so
and now it's next week. I'm much more looking forward, I will say, to the challenges against Brisbane and Hawthorn in the weeks to come. But we've got.
So we're just breaking up again, I think. Yeah, we just broke up a little bit there. So, no, that's right. So it's exciting times. I mean, I'll just rattle through the rest of these performances. So Hawks, you said, put on a solid performance. I've got to agree with that. They look strong against Essendon. Collingwood bounced back in extremely amazing fashion. I hate to say it because of its Collingwood, but they did look on fire. But at the same time, I think we'll go into it a little bit later, but I don't know how to rate Port. I just don't know how to rate them with the transition period. I said it before the Collingwood game to a Collingwood friend. I'm like, I would be hating to play against Collingwood this week. And this was after the GWS demolishing of the Pies, because of you don't know what Collingwood is going to show up. They're going to have to prove themselves. And it just so happened to be Port, where I don't know how to read them because of the whole Ken Hinkley situation, transition, and where that all is at. However, time will tell, and I think this week will be a good indicator as we go to the week ahead. We'll look more into that. The Tsunami win one late for GWS, and it was kind of a bit of an orange feel to the weekend with the Grand Prix. You had the McLaren tops on, and a friend of mine actually said that he was walking through the city and he thought, I didn't realize GWS had this many fans. And who is this Piastri, number 81? So there was a bit of humor from my friend. However, we'll go in Aussies around the ground. We'll talk a bit about the Grand Prix. Gold Coast finally win one away from home, and in an amazing fashion. It was against West Coast, so you would half expect it, but it's still a win. And then Freo Eagles and Port join Blues in the heavy criticised in defeat. So you'll go talk about that later in the Volcanzo. I look forward to that. However, my rant, because the big call last week, and Yoda rants. I hope you like this, Boxy. Yoda's rants, or Woodsy's rant. Now, St Kilda versus Adelaide. Now, since 2014, we've played a total of 16 times now. So 15 times before the weekend. Yep. Only three of them, I believe. 3 of them have been at Marvel. I've got to just fact check myself now while I'm actually talking. But we've only won 2. So out of the 15 games, 10 of them have been at 10 of them have been at Adelaide Oval, 1 at Kazali Stadium. 3 of them, yes, 3 of them have been at Docklands, including the first of the 2014 season. But there've been a lot of heavy losses in that. So my big call last week was going with my heart. And we'll go into the big call session later. I'm not going with my heart this week. I'm going with my head. But I just thought, I believe it's time to play more games, St Kilda Adelaide at Marvel Stadium. Just even up the legend just a little bit. Just a little bit, please. But,
yes, this is something that doesn't get talked about a lot, and I did a whole YouTube video on the fixture. And one thing I brought up was there isn't really a system much like we talked about it about a month ago when Boxy was in and we were talking about the NFL and their fixture and how it's very formalised. I do think the AFL needs to put in some sort of system for determining, particularly for those first block of 18, 19 weeks. Basically, my idea was to have it sort of an alternating. So in year A, let's just pick 2 teams at random. Geelong and Fremantle, they played on the weekend. So in year A of the fixture, in the first 19 weeks, at some point, Geelong will host Fremantle. And then the following year, in those first 19 weeks or whatever it is, first 18 weeks, you will have Geelong travel. So they'll be away to Fremantle. And you can sort of line it up evenly with, okay, you get 1 trip to SA, 1 trip to WA, 1 to Queensland, 1 to Sydney. You get this many teams against the MCG side. You get this many matches. You've got to go and play non-MCG.
That's logical, though. That's logical.
Yeah, I know. It's too logical. But
I think
that will be, again,
one of the things that clubs don't want that because of the financial benefits of playing a team like Collingwood or Richmond, teams that travel more. Like, their fans will travel more, but also they will get the exposure playing at the G if you're playing those teams. So you've got that counterbalance of the grand final is at the G, so you've got to kind of factor that into account, I guess. Yeah. However,
look, let's be honest, GWS should not be playing 1 game of the MCG all year, and it should not be in round 1 anyway. So that was another. I did think about that as a Volcanzo as well, but I've got something else for that segment.
I look forward to hearing what the Volcanzo is about this week, but the new segment now, I think last year I spoke so much about Brisbane Lions being a Chautauqua-like season. I had to do this. I had to have the season 2025 horse race. It's over 2,700 meters, 27 rounds, 28. It's actually 2,800, I just realized, but I'm going to do the semi-final and prelim final as one because, there'll be horses.
Yeah, mine as well.
But I'll go 2,700 meters. We're going to look at the forms. Now, it's not the expectation. It's not how you think they're going to go. This is based purely on each week. So an accumulation. So round 1 is based purely on round 1. Round 2, it'll be kind of the thing. Now, the teams that played in opening round have factored into this just a little bit. But by the end of the season, I'm hoping it'll be a nice little race that we can watch and see how teams have drifted forward and backwards. I don't know what it's going to look like, but here it is. So we're at the starting point now, and the gates are... Let's just get them on the way, and we've got Richmond out in front. Surprising everybody, I think, defeating Carlton. This is where we can actually just look at how teams have gone, and as the weeks progress, we'll look and see, have they gone forward? Have they gone backwards in the premiership contention? You got Adelaide right up there. Even though they played St Kilda, they were just dominant from the start, and I'm excited to see how Adelaide perform. I believe they've got Essendon.
Yeah, I've
If
got a picture right up to me. Let me have a look. Round 2. Yes, Essendon
yeah,
at. I believe that was
I
Marvel.
should get
No,
the
MCG.
fixture.
MCG.
Yeah, I should get the
Yeah, get
fixture
this
up
in front of
right
you. Yeah,
away.
it's
But
MCG.
we've got
Well,
your
I
Geelong
was going to say that.
Cats
Yeah.
up in front there. They're on the inside. They're on the rail. They're well positioned.
Yes.
I've done this deliberate as well because I think teams that are further out, so the teams like Adelaide and obviously Richmond, I feel like you just don't know how they're going to go. Teams like Geelong, as I said, there's a little bit of expectation in teams that are on the
Yes, the teams
the
more
rail.
likely to stay where they are going to be on the inside. Teams sort of less likely to stay where they are right now.
So
Probably going to be on the
yeah,
outside.
so you've got Hawthorn there just trailing Geelong in a nice pocket. You got Gold Coast Suns
Yep.
behind Adelaide. They beat West Coast, let's be real. Domination against West Coast, however, it was West Coast. Then we've got
Yes.
Collingwood there after the loss against GWS, but they dominated against Port Adelaide. Giants, a win against Collingwood and a tight win against Melbourne. I feel like they're just in the rail behind Hawthorn. I feel like those two teams might just have to battle it out later on in the season. Brisbane Lions defeating Sydney, and obviously their opening round game was postponed. The Doggies beating North. Nothing to write home about, really. It wasn't a stunning game. However, they've got injuries that they might get back later on. Sydney defeat 2 losses, but against Hawthorn and Brisbane, I feel like they're midfield. North Melbourne, honourable against Doggies, but they're going to drift back eventually. Melbourne started... I just don't know where to rate Melbourne at the moment. They're midfield on the outside. They could move forward. They could move back. Who knows? Essendon on the rail on the inside. Midfield. It could be another long season for them and the 21st year. So good luck to Essendon supporters. Fremantle, St Kilda, Carlton, Port Adelaide, and West Coast. They're all in the trail. They're trailing the field. Well off the pace. And... you could put that in any order. I've just done that for now. But I think, Eagles, and I put St Kilda there because I'd rate Port Adelaide to move, Collingwood, Carlton to move as well. I just can't see where St Kilda are going to go, especially playing Geelong this week. We've got Richmond the week after, so we might kind of force a move out. But then we've got Port Adelaide and GWS in Gather Round, which I'll talk about later in Rate or Hate because I can't remember what time it was actually, but we've released our Gather Round jumper, so I'll discuss that there because there's a bit of a Gather Round. It's not a Gather Round theme to it, but it links back to our jumper release, and that was unintentional. However, so that's 100 meters in. As we just turn them over just to see where it's tracking right now, and we will keep progressing throughout, so we'll see this race move on as season progresses. So next we come to the heavyweight title. Finally Brisbane defend it.
Yes.
And they did the job. This is
It was a
lot
game.
of what people wanted the grand final to be. Actually, it was a good, nice, decided game of either team could win it. Basically everything the grand final wasn't.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's probably the best way to describe that game. It wasn't the grand final, but it just so happened to have the two teams that were in the grand final last year playing at it. And Brisbane holding on to the belt for now. And one can only assume that my Cats will be the challengers for it in a couple of weeks from now.
Well, who have they got this week?
All I remember is it's a team they should be beating. Is it West Coast?
I believe it is West Coast on the Sunday 110 game. So I believe they've got the easier matchup, but you never know. Now,
well, after Richmond beating Carlton, you can never rule anything out this year. We'll be using that as the Richmond beat Carlton, so anything is possible this year.
So now I think this is one of our favourite topics, and you can see who the Wall of Shame. Josh won't be too happy. But
No, he won't.
we're
I'm
not
very
about
disappointed.
making people happy. Tell us the story of this one.
Well, yeah. So, first game, return game at the MCG for the year, and despite being 41 points up at one particular stage, as I said earlier, they didn't really feel like they were that far in front of a Richmond team that they didn't even expect to win a game or maybe win a handful of games. Yeah, and they went down by 13 points, kicking 9 goals, 15 in that
I just
particular
want to
match.
break
And this
this
has been the
down.
problem
I just
with
want to break this
Carlton
down. You
for a long time.
break it down for you. 5-4, 7-8, 8-9, and in comparison to three-quarter time, okay? 1-1, 4-1, 9-3. Scores are tied at three-quarter time.
Goals
You
were
want to
dead
talk
level
about
at the
good kicking is good football, you look at Richmond, 13-4. You want to talk about bad kicking is bad football, 9-15. So they kicked one goal 6 in the last quarter when scores were tied at three-quarter time.
Yeah, this is the problem that has been for me for Carlton for a while, that they do struggle a little bit in front of goals, and those big names who are very good at kicking bags of goals against less experienced teams, teams further down the ladder at Marvel, less good in crunch time moments of the MCG. And so it finally sort of caught up to Carlton. I've thought for a long time, and I thought this back when David Teague was their coach, that we are being a bit harsh on him. Carlton for me have always been a team of champions as opposed to perhaps a champion team like my Geelong. And they were outgritted on Thursday night. And at three-quarter time, even though I had them winning by 80 plus points, as we'll get to later, I right there thought they don't deserve to win this game in any way, shape, or form, Carlton. And they didn't. They went down by 13 points. Lots of Carlton people familiar with. They had to cancel the membership day on SEN. It was very little went right for Carlton since Thursday. And to be honest, the fact that it was Thursday night and not Friday night and Saturday night means by about this time next week, all the anger has sort of calmed down, and perhaps there's been a little less scrutiny on it, is because, all of a sudden, Fremantle play badly, Port Adelaide play badly, wow, West Coast, what's going on there? Suspensions, this or that. We've sort of half forgotten the fact that Carlton were, a 40-point favourite and lost to Richmond.
We're just going to remind them now about it in our...
Yeah, absolutely.
It's one of those things where you couldn't help not support Richmond. So as we put the round one now, our wall of shame. Last week it was Collingwood, so we've actually got the wall of shame. Now there can be multiple entrants. However, there's only one for the first two rounds. Or round 0 was Collingwood, round 1 it was Carlton. I'm excited, a bit nervous to see who's going to join them in the next things. We've got plenty of room, and we can always make more room.
Yeah.
So,
is there any chance we can get all 18 teams on there? Is there any chance every single team will just have one absolute stinker?
The way we're doing it, it's a good way to keep track of at what round. And it's judged by...
we probably did that last year and we just couldn't remember because we didn't really track it.
Well, it's judged by us. Boxy's not really part... He is and he isn't, but he doesn't get a say in who gets backing as bad football. He can...
Despite the fact this was his segment last year.
He can recommend a team, but we've taken over his segment. Sorry, Boxy. Even if you're a guest star, you don't get final say. It's Lorenzo and I do. And... your Hawks are not safe as well. So I know Brisbane did feature quite a few times last year. However, it is one of those things where it'll be interesting, I think, as well, to see how long it takes all 18 sides to do it. And if 18 sides don't get up there, will the premiership team be actually one of those that avoid the dreaded bad kicking's bad football wall of shame? But we're moving right along. We're going good pace this week. I think online we don't talk too much, and the connection issues mean we can't really have too much of a say. But someone who does love to have a say, and if you watch any of his YouTube videos, you'll know what's the saying, and that is just an opinion.
That's just an opinion. Just to remind the audience that it's really not that big of a deal. it's just an opinion on sport, and it's not really,
But
it's not a world-changing event. They are just opinions on sport. That's all it is.
so
I had to come up with something to be catchy at the end of videos, so that's what I came up with.
So I love it, and I also love the fact that we've kind of ripped off the
Yes.
volcano, and he was called out for basically ripping off other stuff. So we've ripped off the volcano that ripped off whatever it was the Voldamo. We've got the volcano. We don't mind.
Yeah.
We're open about it. So what's this week's volcano?
This week I could have gone in various different directions, but I thought, this one is a little bit broad, but it links back to what we were speaking about, what we briefly touched on earlier about Fremantle, West Coast, Port Adelaide, and Carlton, all really having shocking weekends. And the thing that sort of brought that in, really sort of the thing that sort of connects all of those things is that for lots of the players on those particular teams, I don't think they showed very much effort. And let's just get this straight right. It's round one. Like, with the exception of 4 teams, it is the first game you're playing all year. If there is a week where you're going to perhaps overdo it with enthusiasm, this would be the one. And yet, for half of these teams, particularly in first half of games, I was watching the Fremantle Geelong game, of course, on that Saturday afternoon, and Geelong were moving it very easily at times, even though, to be fair, the Fremantle midfield was holding up. Port Adelaide have just always been a team that's been a bit inconsistent in the way the effort they bring to games, particularly in the middle of the ground. Other than obviously Wietering and maybe Cripps to a less extent, and Silvani, to be fair, in the fourth quarter, there wasn't much effort from Carlton. I said earlier that Richmond really outgritted Carlton in the crunch time moments of that Thursday night game, and if there's ever going to be a week where you're going to perhaps overdo it, this is it. So if you're really not showing much effort as an AFL footballer coming in the first week of a season, I'm not sure. I can't imagine what it's going to be like, right, if you have Fremantle, to use them as an example, or West Coast. You have to travel across the other side of the country. It's round 15. It's a wet day in Melbourne. It's like 12 degrees. You're playing a better side in front of 35,000. So if you're not going to show much effort in the first week of the season, where really it's a fresh slate, anything can happen, and usually does. We've seen a lot of teams in recent memory have really terrible previous seasons and then rocket up into premiership and finals contentions the year after. So if you're not going to show much effort for us in this first week of the season, I don't think it's very hard to see where you're going to get that effort for in the back half of the season. I was completely with, and he's copped a lot of flack of it, but I was completely with Kane Corns and his opinions with Harley Reid through the week. His ceiling is legend in the Hall of Fame. He has that much potential, but he needs to focus more on the football stuff and not trying to win free kicks at every stoppage. And worry about tussling with opponents on the center wing while the ball's 20 meters away. So there was a lot of teams this week, a lot of individuals, particularly across the teams that really got battered, both on the scoreboard and in the media. Fremantle, West Coast, Port Adelaide, and Carlton. Well, I just think they just didn't show anywhere near enough effort appropriate for any at the start of a season.
I think you can definitely add St Kilda to that. However,
as
I mentioned earlier in my rant, it's one of those things where I don't even expect to play well against Adelaide, because especially in Adelaide, they're our bogey team. But I can't disagree with you. And it's like the teams that basically give up in round one when just a bit of pressure's been applied. It's
it must be very frustrating as a supporter base too, when you've waited 6 months for a season to come back around, and again 0-0 flesh.
I love Carlton's response. When does cricket season start again? And
yes,
it's going to be a long season for us Saints. I know that for a fact, but I'm still optimistic. And talking about cricket though, I'm excited because I've just had a sneak peek at what this is about. And actually, no, sorry. I always jump the gun. I always jump the gun. However,
I had a feeling you might do that. We'll get to.
I want to talk.
There was a surprising chat, but I'm going to talk a lot of cricket in the history lesson. But go on.
I want to talk about before we go into the rate I hate jumper section. The topic of the week, I think, is suspensions with the Jackson Archer. Now, I know you're big on this because of the concussions.
I'm gonna bring props here in a second. But keep going, Woodsy. That's
And
what just what I'm doing.
I'm interested to know because uh, it's one of those things where I'm on the fence with this one. I'm
Yep.
very much an advocate of if you cause an injury, but it's this is a footy related injury. The braid, the braided Maynard. I'm pretty sure it was Maynard. That
Yeah, Brandon.
terminology came along then. This is a
Yeah.
footy related injury where it's not his shoulder, it's something below the knees where you can't really control as much. You can't brace for an impact, you can't protect. However, I don't disagree with the suspension because they're trying to make a statement, but they need to be consistent with that. So I'm going to rate the
Yeah.
suspension.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. So I'm gonna rate as well. The one thing I will say is I would rather the AFL sort of perhaps overreact a little bit than massively underreact. It
Yeah.
wasn't the worst action by a footballer that will ever be seen on a football field. It was a terrible collision, but the actual action from Archer wasn't terrible. I'm sure he's a reasonable human being who will hopefully have at least a semi decent career in the Australian Football League. But I thought it was late to a contest. It was a little bit clumsy. It was interesting to hear. I was very surprised when Nathan Buckley said he should have been suspended. I was not expecting that at all. But yeah, suspensions were back in vogue this particular week. We had four of them, three or four of them. Yeah, four of them. Three ended up getting appealed to the tribunal. It was a good night for the Australian Football League because they won every single one of them and relatively decisively as well. David Zeta reporting magnificently as always. Yeah, so I will say a lot of people sometimes will bring up the fact that maybe it's not deserving of three. Obviously, within the context of the system the AFL's created, that's not really an option. It's either everything or nothing. It's either three plus or nothing because there's a concussion involved.
Yeah.
I would like to see the AFL. Basically, the reason why that is because they say if there has been an incident that is a reportable offence and there's a concussion involved, you've got to automatically regardless of anything, rate that as severe impact. If they just downgraded that to high, which basically moves it down from 3 to 2, I think that would be a much better way of doing it because then you can go, well, this incident is worse than that. I'm not saying this one is, but a random incident. Michael Christian's looking and going, no, that's a concussion is involved, but it's not worthy of high. So then you can bring it up, and that way, so it feels like one that I'd be more happy to give just a couple of weeks for. That isn't an option here for the tribunal. That isn't an option for Michael Christian. They don't get to basically write the rules as far as I can tell. Maybe they can contribute, but at the end of the day, they have to follow the system they're given. Same with umpires. They might not like a particular rule, but they have to enforce it based on what their bosses tell them to do, as opposed to what they think, I don't know, insufficient intent or deliberate rush behind, whatever rule they might go, I'd rather we tweak this there. Holding the ball's obviously a big one. They're going to do that. They've got to go by the rules in front of him. So I think he was rightly suspended. 3 weeks, probably a fraction harsh. It would ideally be 2. That's not the system the AFL has created. I was happy to see other suspensions. Lynch was a little bit unlucky. There was a bit of a mitigating circumstance with the push. Probably still worthy of a suspension, though he does come off the ground. And usually when you get pushed like that, you unless you like yeah, I don't know, one of the all-time great bodybuilders, you're probably not lifting someone at a weight that Tom Lynch is. The McInerney one was the simplest one, and one of the props I basically brought here is I will mention that with the McInerney one, who got suspended for 3 weeks as the Swans player in that game against Brisbane, where it was Starshevich, wasn't he? Collected on the end of it. Every other contact sport would utilise one of these. This is my hockey card, so it's a circle because that's for whatever reason is the system we've come up with. We have a square yellow card, but this was I've been watching a lot of rugby union stuff in this particular space because I know their rules are brilliant at it. And basically, the ruling there is direct contact to the head, high degree of danger, coming with force, no mitigation. So that's the big one there. So mitigation in rugby union doesn't say, well, it's not an offence at all if there's mitigation. No, it brings it down. So with the Lynch one, there was maybe mitigation to bring it down to a yellow. The McInerney one, there was no doubt there was no mitigation, so that would give it as a straight red. Who was the other one? The Hawthorn player, I can't remember his name now. Who got who?
It escapes me, but yeah, go on.
who got a I was surprised Mike Christian gave that a careless initially. I thought that might have been graded as intentional, but watching it back a few times, hearing his particular explanation, maybe I was a bit hasty because I was almost going, "Oh, that's an intentional strike. That should be one of these." But then I sort of hearing the
Was it
explanation,
Scrimshaw?
and I was like, "Oh, okay, maybe that's careless." Yeah, Scrimshaw, that's his name. All I could remember was S. That's all I could have in my
Yep.
head. Yeah. So,
Good old Google.
I've been big on bringing red cards in. I've been big on clamping down on this sort of behaviour. It's not the worst incident of all time from Archer. I do think it is worthy of suspension. Maybe not 3, but that's not how these things works. It was careless. It was late. It was not below the knees free kick because Cleary wins the ball. Perhaps there are things we could do about changing the rules about requiring players to stay on their feet. Again, in rugby union, you basically always have to stay on, play the game on your feet, and you can't go off your feet. But that's not relevant to this discussion. I rate the all the suspensions handed out. Perhaps they were a fraction harsh, and ideally they'd be a week less or 2 weeks less. But that's not the system the AFL's created. It's either for on many of these, it's either all or nothing. And they got the all players, Lynch, and others who got suspended this week.
Well, I know Dav is going to be disappointed because we're not arguing, and we're
Yes.
agreeing. But I just can't. I'm one of those things where I don't like to. I think there still needs to be a system in place. Like, do I think
It could be better.
Jackson Archer was hard done by? I totally think he's hard done by. However, I just can't. Like, it's one of those things where I don't have the answer. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on that. I love it. But now we're going to go into rate or hate the footy jumpers because each week we're going to come up with a theme. And we don't actually have the photo up here, but it is the Doggies' 100th game on Friday, 100th year anniversary of being in the AFL, VFL, or VFL AFL against Collingwood on Friday night. They're wearing a special jumper. They're being known as Footscray. And so I thought, let's look at anniversary jumpers. So
I'll ask you a question before we get into that. Woodsy, I just want to ask, and this has just come to me. Rate or hate the Bulldogs just revert to being plain old Footscray again?
Oh.
I know we didn't put this down anyway. It just came to me as you were saying that.
I like it. I'm going to ask you what you think first because I'm on the fence and I can go either way. And I'm going to do a Davin here. I'm going to argue against whatever you say.
I think it's probably. I mean that 2016 premiership will all have the Western Bulldogs won it on the Channel 7 score graphic, and in the history books will be listed as Western Bulldogs. I do think Footscray it links to the history. It's perhaps a little bit more different. It would say because every time the Americans find the sport, they always call the team just Western, which nobody does. So it changes little things on that regard. But more than anything else, I just think it's a better name. To be honest, I don't think Western Bulldogs is that good of a name.
So you're going with Footscray?
To be honest. I would rather that. I mean, it doesn't really bother me too much, to be honest.
I think too much time has passed.
I would rather them put Footscray.
I think too much time has passed.
I had a feeling like.
I think the Western Bulldogs is encompassing all of the Western suburbs area. So not just Footscray. You're not just isolating it to the Footscray Bulldogs. Like every other team I know, yes, they've got the suburbs, but you've got the West Coast Eagles. You've got the Greater Western Sydney Giants. Then you've got Adelaide, Port Adelaide, Fremantle, Gold Coast, Brisbane, Sydney. I mean, you will have Tasmania, so encompassing a state. I'm looking forward to that. But like St Kilda, they encompass, like they've taken ownership of that Bayside area. It's one of those things where, Western Bulldogs, I think, had they not won 2016 and it could have been, okay, you could make a case. I think you're right in that sense, but also too much time has passed and I just can't see it happening now. However, let's move on to these jumpers now. The Collingwood, it is the 150 year?
125th.
125 year. I knew it was 150. What is the Geelong one?
Geelong one is the 60th year anniversary of the 90th.
So we're just breaking up there, but it's 1963 anniversary. And then we've got the
Yeah, it was the
Hawthorn
60th
one.
anniversary of 1963.
Yeah, and then we've got the Hawthorn one, which I don't mind. I know. However, I don't mind it, but I'm gonna rate it into the hate category.
Yeah, I was going to say the same with the Hawthorn one.
It's
This
gonna
is
be
their current
controversial to Boxy. I know
one, isn't it?
it hasn't won me over yet. I'm gonna probably have to see another game in it just to get a feel for it.
Yeah, I think I'm totally hate, to be honest.
Um,
I think you can do better. Some of your brown ones are not too bad, Hawthorn, but I think you can do better.
It hasn't won me over yet.
Yeah.
The Geelong one,
I also do.
I love myself a collar.
I was just going to say. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the collar jumpers, especially the retro style ones, and I'm gonna just say love because there's a few more with collars, and I think I'm gonna love them all. And the Collingwood one,
Yeah.
I see what they're going for, and I know Padge and Dav will love it. I can't bring myself to loving a Collingwood jumper, so I hate.
I'm probably going to do something similar-ish on the Collingwood one. I don't absolutely hate the Geelong one, but when we ever do these sort of retro ones, I feel like they're too close to the current ones.
But
like
you don't
that
even
jumper
change.
should be...
Oh, they're too close. You don't have any change to it. Bloody hell. You Geelong supporters, oh, they're too close. Well, if you have blue and white stripes and that's all you have, you can't complain when your retro one is... We're going to actually make it like the 1960... We're going to have the collar. We're going to have the button up. Oh, it's too close to the current one.
Blue white.
I hope you like this, Dab, by
Blue
the way.
and white hoop should go like how the Collingwood one has the black, like the Collingwood one has the black and white stripes all the way down with the box. It should be the same with the one we did in 2023. It should have 5 blue and white hoops with the number in an actual sort of panel box.
I'm just going to Footy Jumpers right now. I'm going to Footy Jumpers right now to see what you wore in 1963 because
I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Now I know why they don't do it. They don't do it because it doesn't work the cotton on.
Okay. You're right. You're right.
It should be.
I just wish that they had done it, but they're going a modern twist. Fine. Bloody hell. I try and give Dav what he wants, and yet you defeat me with facts, and I can't argue them. So we'll move on.
And that number really should be black, not blue.
These three now. We've got a few collars. Oh, we've got one collar. The Sydney one, which is the 100th anniversary of the 1918 Premiership. I want to say, I don't know official for watching this. Please comment. I'm just going to quickly do my fact check right now. It was 2018. Yep, 1918 Premiership. 100 years. We've got the Port Adelaide one, which was the away. This was the. Oh, this is they're basically their old home one, which I think they should change back into. I could have done the prison bars, but I didn't want to offend Dav and Padge.
We're sucking up to Collingwood here as well. The AFL do it in this matter, and now you were doing it here.
Now, well, I've got to save all the jumpers for different times, so
fair enough.
I can't just bring them all out at once. So I need the Collingwood bars. I need the prison bars for when Padge is on. And so we can both love it and we can hear him whinge, an amazing feeling that's going to be. Love you, Padge. It was the retro jumper based on the 97 design, and that was last year. So, Port Adelaide, I know this is the jumper you should be bringing out back. I like this a lot more, and you can complain about Collingwood wearing teal in their training jumper just to, be that back. But I think the biggest news here is the St Kilda one. Today they've announced Gather Round. They're going to be wearing something very similar to this, and I'm just going to say right now, I love all these jumpers, by the way. Now I'm just trying to get the gather round jumper so I can just quickly flash it on screen, because the one that's up was for the 140th year. And had everybody that played 5 or more games. And I'm just going to quickly jump this on the screen here. It's got a collar.
Yes. Did
So
the 2013 one have a collar?
It was 2014 one did not have a collar. There you
Yeah,
go. You can see them.
So that's,
See them just next to each other. I'm excited. I'm just gonna cover you up and do this. Just there you go. Look, this is what I want Gather Round to be. And this jumper will be reviewed in Gather Round. I just thought I'd announce it as it literally came. If we were doing the usual time, that would not have been released. So it's just amazing that we've got a bit of there's some good to come out of me working today. And so what are your thoughts on all three?
I definitely I was gonna say I wasn't as big of a fan on the St. Kilda one, and then you brought up that one. I definitely like the one they're gonna use for Gather Round. I haven't actually seen the jumper, so that's the first time I've seen it. I think there looks like on that one that they're gonna wear in Gather Round, there seems to be one less black, and the hoops are gonna be a little bit bigger, which I think it's definitely an improvement from the 2013 one.
Let's have a look. Yeah, it definitely looks. It's a different cut. I think that's what it is. But yes, it looks more spaced out. But I'll have
which is probably less authentic to the original, but probably looks a little bit better.
Yeah, well, the original was actually stylized with a white handkerchief. So I like that, the fact that they've got the collar to kind of symbolize that. But so rate or hate? Let's hear them.
Definitely rate the. I'm happy to rate all three, though I do think the Gather Round one that St Kilda will wear is a slight improvement from their one from 2013.
Said, Gather Round. There's a sneak peek on what we're going to be doing. Gather Round, and the last few.
Oh boy!
These I forgot to mention what these. Actually, no, I did mention what they were. So this one is the 100th, the centenary of Richmond joining the VFL AFL, the 160th year of Melbourne, and the 50th anniversary of St Kilda's premiership.
Okay.
So, I rate the Richmond one. I think the Melbourne one is just a bit too South Melbourne-y for me. And the St Kilda one, I feel like it could have done a little bit better.
Yeah, this is what I think we're on the same page with that.
Just in the rate for me, just because I've actually got it. They didn't release any retail of that jumper, so that's weighted to the hate. But I was able to pick up a Luke Delaney. He didn't play in the game, but I got the Luke Delaney play issue, so I've at least got that jumper.
St Kilda did much better in, what was it, 2023 for their 150th year, with the sort of the bigger logo sticking out a little bit. Sorry, 2024, sorry.
Right, 2023? Yeah, 2023, you're right.
It's been 2023, because you were
2013, yeah. I always thought that was 2014, the red-black stripe one. So, yeah, it was 2023.
Yeah, so that one,
we went one year back with
the logo. Should have done for the 50th year anniversary for that one. So I'll put the St Kilda one.
Definitely agree on that.
Because it feels like it should be more. You said it's very much South Melbourne-like, the Melbourne one, and it is, but it's a simple design that works. So I'll put that in the rate, and I'm not a fan of that Richmond one more than anything else, just because they've thrown the logo on top of it. If they didn't have the logo, I'd probably be slightly leaning towards.
Would you have liked the logo had it been like in the St Kilda placement?
That could have worked as well. But they probably didn't.
I'm intrigued by that, and
state flag style.
Yep. So this is our rate or hate jumpers. Rate or hate from now on will kind of be a topic that we can discuss, and then we'll bring in some jumpers, and there'll be a theme. So the theme from this round was obviously because of Western Bulldogs Footscray having their 100th year in the VFL AFL celebration game against Collingwood. Next week it will be a little bit of a charity theme because of it'll be Maddie's match. So I thought, why not pull this out? I had to actually find it, but I found it, so I can actually take that to the game. I will be going, but it'll be charity jumpers. So if you've got any suggestions for charity jumpers, please hit us up, or obviously Lorenzo and I will come up with a few. Hopefully we'll be back in the studio and Padge can join us, or someone else might join us, who knows. Now, I did mention the cricket earlier. I'm excited to hear what lesson you're going to teach us this week.
This comes off the back of we did mention this. It might have even been around the Aussie Around the Ground one we did a couple of weeks ago. The whole sort of drama, Peter Malinauskas, the SA Premier, getting involved. Adelaide Oval will not be available for the Sheffield Shield final coming up that South Australia will be hosting. And given the sort of cricket v footy dynamics, I thought I want to sort of go back and see what it used to be like. So what I did, and sort of more out of random than anything else, is I went to Wikipedia and went, well, let me go back 30 years. I went back to the 1995, it's technically not quite 30 years, but it's close enough, it's 29-ish, the Cricket Summer 1995-96, and it turns out that was a beautiful one to use, because there were like 2 or 3 very memorable cricket moments for various different reasons that sort of happened in that summer. So I know this is mostly a footy podcast, but I'm going to talk a lot of cricket here, because just to sort of compare how things have gone. So cricket by November 1995 has definitely taken over. So this was the Carlton won the premiership? Yeah, Carlton won the premiership, beat Geelong in the grand final 95 in September. By the 9th of November, we have our first test match, which feels early. Earlier than we usually have it. Usually it's sort of the end of November now. But 9th to 13th of November, Australia was playing Pakistan, played a couple of test matches, won by an innings and 126 runs at the Gabba. And, there was 3 test matches, sorry. Then the 17th to 20th of November, winning by 155 runs at down at Hobart. And then, weirdly enough, a match up in Sydney at the SCG, where Pakistan actually won by 74 runs from the 3rd of November to the 4th of December. So by November, cricket is very much involved. We have the Tri-Series, of course, the iconic part of that. And it's very weird when you look at these sort of dates for it, and how much these ODI matches are just sort of plumped right in the middle of all these test matches. So you have test matches going on. So Sri Lanka are down in Australia for this time, and weirdly enough, the West Indies, because they were always here in the 90s, come down for that Tri-Series. So it's Sri Lanka, the West Indies, Australia, and the Tri-Series. Pakistan are here and gone for the Test Series in November. So for example, we've got that first Test match from the 8th to the 11th of December. Is out in Perth. Australia win that by an innings and 36 runs. And then you have a series of one-day internationals. How many of them exactly? 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we get to Boxing Day, the second test. This is the famous match where I believe Morley was no-balled quite a few times by umpire Darryl Hare. So that happens Boxing Day 1995. Then this is the weirdest one of all. So we get to this would never happen now because we know that New Year's is very much a test in Sydney. But back in the day, on the New Year's Day, they used to play a one-day international, and the 1996 one-day international was the famous Michael Bevan pulling a rabbit out of the hat late in a 43-run rain-reduced match to win off the last ball, hitting a 4 down the ground. Bill Laurie added some iconic commentary to that particular moment. We also have the Australia Day Adelaide test match. So Sydney, which we associate right at the end of the summer, had their test match right at the very beginning there with the match with the Pakistan match right through January, and obviously right to the end of January, Australia end up winning that Tri-Series. They beat Sri Lanka 2-0 in a best-of-3. The other one I wanted to get to, which was interesting, was the Sheffield Shield. So that runs its way through, and that finishes. Actually, if we were doing it this year, it would be in a couple of weeks, because that doesn't end till the end of March. Here's the funny thing. So I've just picked this 1995-96 summer completely out of random, Woodsy. Where do you reckon, can you guess, which grounds, keeping in mind recent events, hosted the 1995-1996? Yes, it was the Adelaide
Adelaide
Oval. The
Oval.
Adelaide Oval hosted the 1995-1996 Sheffield Shield final, which ended up being a draw. South Australia batted out a draw. They finished 9 for 208 at the end of their fourth innings, and they won the Shield. Now,
No, but
the
however, there
yeah,
was
go on.
there was no footy played at Adelaide Oval then.
There was no Adelaide. Yes, that is the interesting thing. So I believe there was a game. Yes, there was a game scheduled that weekend in Adelaide, but it was at Football Park.
Yeah,
So
I was gonna
Adelaide
say
beat
because of
Sydney by
the.
points.
I,
Yeah,
did
go on.
they play any?
I don't think there was really. There used to be football at Adelaide Oval like in the '60s, and
Yeah, no. Well, I
then the
think at Football
SANFL.
Park, Adelaide was always at Football Park.
Yeah.
So
Adelaide was always at Football Park until the Adelaide Oval redevelopment, and they move in 2014. So we talk about how early the season's moving. We're getting very close to February, but in 1996, which was the centenary season, the season got underway on the 29th of March. So we wouldn't even be in the football season yet at this particular point. So you can really see
would still be doing pre-season. So
it's still be in the pre-season. So you can really see where these lines are being drawn. November to March is cricket. The October slice is really horse racing, with a little bit into early November as well. And then from April to September is football and would be rugby as well in the rugby states. By the way, 1996 season started off with a 127-point win for Geelong beating Melbourne in front of 46,000 at the MCG on a Friday night. St Kilda also lost in that first week of the season down at VFL Park.
I'm literally just quickly going to see when the first Carlton Richmond was.
Yeah, that was only like 2012 or something. So I just thought it was interesting, given we've been talking a bit about cricket versus football dynamics, going back and just looking into how things used to be. So November to February, March was squarely cricket time. And yes, it was true back in the day that with particularly in Perth and Adelaide, they had very specific. So you had the Wacker and the Adelaide Oval for cricket, and even though the Wacker was used by West Coast for quite a few years as their home ground, I'm pretty sure the first final, not in Victoria, was. I'm pretty sure that was a West Coast game at the Wacker in 1991. I want to say. I'll fact check that now. So yeah, a lot happened in the.
Was 90. I think you'll find 97 might have been some night. Wacker was used for night games. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, okay. So 1991, that final was at Subiaco. But I'm very confident that 1994 West Coast beat Collingwood by like 2 points. And that one was definitely at the Wacker.
Sorry, I just looked. Carlton Richmond's first game opening the season was 08. But I want to say,
okay,
like,
that's actually a bit earlier.
If you look at like the 97 season, like for cricket grounds, like obviously you got MCG, SCG, but I'm pretty sure like in the West you had Subiaco, but you might have had, or it might have been day games. It's Wacker for day games or night games? No, they played on a Friday night, so it's one of those things where they played at the Wacker and Subiaco Oval for some years before, obviously, going straight to Subiaco and then obviously Perth Stadium or Optus Stadium now. So very interesting to hear about that.
So that was the way it used to be, but really football's sort of taken over all of March now, to the point where cricket can't even get for their Sheffield Shield final, the main venue that they would ideally like, because we've got a couple of football matches that absolutely need to be played, and no matter what the SA Premier wants, he isn't going to get his own way on that particular matter. So very different times it was 30 years ago. It was very clear in the calendar where the football codes were at, where racing was at.
I think also what you got to look at is the amount of rounds. The amount of rounds that I think it was only 20. I mean, it was 22 in the later 90s. So I reckon
22 rounds.
Yeah, it was like in 97. I'm just quickly doing this. It was 22 rounds, so 96, 22 round season. So now with the amount of rounds we've got, it's a bit later. However, and obviously it ends at the same time, so you have to move it forward. But I think the fact that we don't have preseason games is kind of... Yeah. Anyways, let's move
So
along.
that's the history lesson this week.
Thank you. Let's move along to the who can and can't win the flag. Now, we've got everybody's predictions up here, but it's only going to be you and me making these predictions this week. Any to put the X on?
I've been thinking about this, whether or not I make a move, and I'm very tempted with your Saints whether or not to put them down now or perhaps wait a week. I'm going to wait a week, but they are the next ones on the chopping block. Them and Hort probably as well. I'm very happy with my first three. Yes, Richmond had a good win, but I think that's going to be more of a bit of an outlier on their particular season. They'll definitely win more games than most people expected. I don't think they can be down at this point. But I'll stay with my three, but I'm eyeing up the Saints already.
Well, I don't blame you, as I'm just going to quickly go to mine. Obviously, Boxy's just got Richmond. I've got the same as you. I'm giving it till round 5 at least. Because of Adelaide.
I'm going to be much less
now,
optimistic in this segment.
You might have also noticed I have changed the Hawthorn logo back because apparently the AFL website used that one. So I don't think they'll be changing their logo.
And that's the standard we're going with.
And I'm not
Fair
actually.
enough.
I think Richmond could beat Port this week, and if that's the case, Port will have a red X next week. But for me, I'm not changing it just yet. Now, the big calls. Now, let's just refresh it. If you've been following our socials, you know what they were. Lorenzo win by 80 plus, and myself was just a St Kilda win. Look, both of them could have been. I went with my heart, you went with your head, and at the end of the day, they're both wrong. You were just 93 points off. I was only about 60 points or thereabouts. But round 2, what are you going with?
I wanted to stay a bit more in a lane. So I've sort of taken basically. So we've got Geelong, St Kilda in the first extra time cup game coming up, and Geelong, they had a good weekend. The St Kilda defence, they did not have a good weekend. So I was initially thinking 20 goals plus and having a very... It's got to be goals, but I went, nah, that's probably... I feel like I'm going to be...
That's a bad kicking is bad football prediction, right?
There was a bad way that could lead badly. They scored like 150 points, but only 19 goals. Oh, that doesn't count. So Geelong score at least 120 points. That also doesn't mean I can still be right and Geelong can lose, like 120, 121. Yeah. Like that was
like that. It's a bit more open this week, and as you can see, we're both on 0. We don't get negative scores. You have to get it right. You can't be more right than your position. This week I'm going for a combined margin. So if one team loses, the other 3 have to make it up. But it's a win combined 200 plus for Collingwood, Hawthorn, Geelong, and Adelaide. So
not much faith in the Saints this week, I can see, Woodsy.
Well, as I said, we've won the last 3 games against Geelong and Marvel. And not the last 3 games because you played it as GMHBA. But the injuries... We're still finding our feet, and I think we're about 3-4 years off, and I've said that for some time now. So obviously Geelong play St Kilda, Collingwood play the Doggies, Hawthorn play Carlton, and Adelaide play Essendon. So I could have probably gone Port Adelaide, Richmond, but I think that's going to be a lot closer than.
Yeah.
I actually think I could have gone Richmond for the upset, but I'm like, nah. I could have gone. I could have, and the thing is, I could have added Brisbane to this, but that would have been a bit easy. I would have had to have gone 250, 300.
You could have thrown in Brisbane, but you would have to have gone at least 250, if not more.
Yeah. So the rule for the big calls is kind of unwritten, where it has to be a bit of a stretch. You can't just go, oh, I think Brisbane are going to win. These are the big calls. These aren't the given calls. These aren't the given calls. These are the big calls that you go, I'm putting it out there. I'm saying this is what I can see happen. I'm not going, oh, St Kilda are going to lose. That's my given for the week. No, it's not given calls. It's big calls. So I like him, and I look forward to it. Every week that someone else is on, they will get added. But because it's mainly just us two as the core group for this, we get the graphics. And talking about the big calls, we're looking at the week ahead, and this is kind of closing the show as well, because I just want to run through, and then I've got a few stats to give. So we've got Carlton Hawthorn starting on the Thursday night. Will Carlton, another Thursday night, is it going to be the same way?
I was going to build into that almost. Carlton have way too many games. I already want to flex some of these out. They have way too many games in front of a national audience for a team that lost to Richmond in their first game of the season.
Well,
so
you can't predict the first game. You can't predict the first game, but we've got the Footscray Bulldogs, as they will be known on Friday night, running out at the G in a home game against Collingwood. That's exciting.
Yes, a rare Bulldogs MCG home game. Technically speaking, I mean, effectively it's a Collingwood home game because it's their nominal home ground, but it'll be an important occasion for
them. It's good to see the AFL actually allowing clubs to do this. I like the fact that they're allowing the Marvel clubs to play the bigger clubs at the G for revenue purposes and celebration purposes, so that's good. On the Saturday, we've got Essendon and Adelaide at the G. We've got Port Adelaide and Richmond at Adelaide Oval. We've got our two teams, Geelong and St Kilda. Sorry, we're the home team. So St Kilda and Geelong that way. I don't know. And then on the Sunday, we've got Brisbane Eagles, North Melbourne, Fremantle and Sydney. And, of course, Gold Coast and Giants have the bye. So some little interesting fact while I was looking at the St Kilda Adelaide thing. I also found that Brisbane have won the last 6 games against West Coast, and Melbourne have won the last 6 games against North Melbourne. So I could have added those two teams into it for a little bit more of a thing. But as we said, I would have had to increase the margin. Now, the big talk, Saints Cats, won't go into much of a preview because I think it's better for the review show. When one of us will be happy, the other will be sad. It'll most likely be me, the one that's sad, and Lorenzo will be rubbing it in. However, as I mentioned, we have won the last 3 at Marvel, so if that's anything to go by, I might be the one that's excited next week while we're live in the studio. You will see these banners behind each of us, and Lorenzo does have a Geelong one, so he will be... It's not with him at the moment because it's in my house somewhere. I don't know exactly where I put it. I think I put it in my bag. I'll be taking it to campus tomorrow, but that's footy chat for this week. It is a bit of a strange one because we are online. We've had a few connection issues. Hopefully it comes out all right, and hopefully we will be on campus next week, and hopefully there'll be somebody else joining us, so it's not just us two talking about footy, chewing your ear off and everything in between. But until then, thank you for listening. Thank you for staying tuned. And I hope you enjoyed the little presentation we put forward. We will be utilizing TV a lot more, so make sure you stay tuned. And make sure you stay tuned, as always, to all the other Extra Time podcasts. We've got the 9 Dart podcast with Lorenzo and Josh. We've got Aussies Around the Grounds, which we will be recording straight after this. And I'm excited to see and hear everything in the Aussies world of sport, or everything in the world of sport with the Aussies, because there is a lot to talk about. The Crumbs, obviously, Simone and Wig, or Caro and Wig. Simone and Wig are they're the same people, so it's Caro and Wig. They'll be talking everything women's sports and anything else. There might be future podcasts. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next week.